If you have a misstep on Reddit, you have to keep in mind that this is not like a social media platform. We've said many, many times on this podcast that the only social media platform that is indexable by search engines is LinkedIn. Everything else is within a contained environment. You post something on Facebook, it's not going to be crawled and found by Google. So when you think about that, when you think about the fact that social media is somewhat contained, you can have a misfire on social media and ultimately limit the risk of that. You can delete the post that gets all of the nasty responses. You can, over the course of time, put more posts so that that gets pushed down on your page. There are ways for you to ultimately recover. On Reddit, however, it is there, it is permanent, and it is likely to be found. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Crushing Chaos with Law Firm Mentor podcast, where on today's show, we are going to be talking about something out of the box. We're going to be talking about law firm marketing on Reddit. All right, so you guys are probably thinking, what the hell am I talking about? Right? This topic came to me from, I will be very candid, a digital marketer. I have a lot of respect for this person. I'm not going to say who they are because this is kind of an unknown secret that they did authorize me to talk about. But I will share that when I had this conversation with this particular marketer, they threw out this idea, and my original skepticism, my spidey senses just kind of went wild, right? And so I am sure some of you are probably thinking some of the same things that I was thinking, which is, who would ever market a law firm on Reddit? I kind of think of it as one of those, trashy, tawdry, low-level places to hang out. And I say that as somebody who uses Reddit. why am I both trash talking it and a user of it? Well, so here's the thing. Reddit is a platform where sub-communities are formed. In any place that there is community, there's opportunity for lawyers to expand reach. Okay, we intellectually understand that. But at the same time, what I usually think of as the fodder for Reddit is a lot of places where people will gather to complain. And you see a lot of people trash talking different entities, different businesses, corporations. A lot of times people will go to Reddit to ask about people's experiences with what's kind of out there in the world. You see a lot of commentary about what's kind of happening out in the social world that we're in with celebrities. And there's a lot of dating and relationship stuff, which has become very hostile and toxic over the last few years. So I've just never thought of it as a serious place where lawyers would hang out. But then I thought about it in this conversation that I had with this marketer. And one of the things that he shared with me is, well, think about it. When was Facebook ever designed for lawyer marketing? And the answer is it wasn't, right? It never has been. But people were able to figure out very quickly that if they want to expand their reach, they want to go where people are, people who might have a need for their service. And people come in all forms, including people who are on a business board and might need a business lawyer, people who are having a relational issue and might need a family lawyer, people who desire to acquire property and might need a real estate lawyer, people who have a desire to expand investments and might be interested in things like cannabis law. There's any number of different ways that we find our people, and our people are everywhere if we think about it. We just have to be open to the possibility that our people could be in a place that's somewhat non-traditional for us. So when you think about Reddit as an opportunity, and I do want to think about it as an opportunity because when I explored this from the lawyer marketing perspective, we here at Law Firm Mentor are always looking for ways to expand our clients' reach in the different ways that they're able to market. Reddit was a no-brainer thought process. So I really gave it some thought and started looking at some strategic ways that our clients can make use of this strategy. And one of the ways that came up was something that I wanted to explore with all of you. So today we're going to be talking about Reddit, and I'm going to give you 5 different considerations that you should really seriously think about if you want to get into doing some law firm marketing on Reddit. Okay, so the first thing you have to consider is that you want to think about authority and not advertising. Okay, this is very important because Reddit, as I noted before, is a place I've always thought of as the complaint factory, right? If somebody's unhappy about something, they're going to take to Yelp to complain about whomever it is. But they're also going to take to Reddit. They're going to look for people to sympathize with how bad their experience was. They're looking to conglomerate thought around that. So you have to be very careful, but you have to recognize that on Reddit, people are looking for you to be an expert and to provide help, not to advertise. There is a high level of skepticism around advertising, especially on that particular platform. So you don't want to go in there and think, okay, how can I buy some ads, right? And you don't want to have a superficial level of engagement. You really want to be there to provide value, right? Now, once upon a time, I had heard that statement and I was thinking, who the heck has time for that, right? Especially when I first got into law firm marketing beyond just building a website. But if I think about it, that was very much how Law Firm Mentor, started and how we scaled very quickly into seven figures in only a few years. And that was by virtue of showing up and adding value, right? I wasn't kicking off my coaching career and I wasn't starting to get into the world of selling something. I really just wanted to help lawyers. I had learned a lot and I knew how to share information. I knew how to provide value and I knew how to facilitate deeper level thought conversations in the realm of coaching. So I said, well, I'm here. I've got time. I've got energy. I want to help. Let me just see how I can help, right? I want you to have that mindset when you approach Reddit as an opportunity. And when you do that, I want you to think about the fact that the platform rewards authentic, helpful participation, right? So this is where you can really build authority. The way that you do that is essentially by answering questions ethically. Here, I want you to think Avo, right? Avo is kind of the best known platform where lawyers show up and answer questions, but you're not going to answer questions with a treatise about all of the steps, the ins and outs, the hows that make you irrelevant. You're going to answer questions in a way that just give a poignant piece of valuable information. And of course, there are all the different ways that we can do that ethically that are not giving out all the answers in what is an otherwise non-structured, non-consultation format, okay? But you become a trusted voice when you show up and give helpful suggestions, when you just become the voice, become the authority that people look to. And the more you're able to do that, the more you can attract people that build your authority so that you can ultimately get to a place and get those people off of Reddit into a place of your community or other communities that you're on where more direct forms of advertising can occur. Okay, second consideration. If you're going to advertise and market on Reddit, you want to think about ethical and compliance considerations. Now, this really goes to the heart of what I said before, which is, yes, you can give answers to questions, but you want to do that ethically, right? You don't want to go spitting out a yes, you can do that or no, you can't without the caveats that we as lawyers love to give, which everybody hates, the old it depends, right? Because there are a lot of pieces of information that people oftentimes don't know to give. They're not being deceptive. They're just telling you what they think is relevant. And of course, you know that there are a lot of other considerations that may also be relevant that they have not thought about. So you want to think about reading very carefully what is being asked. You want to avoid giving out legal advice, right? Legal information is not the same thing as legal advice. How do I fill out this form? Could be legal advice, or it could be name, rank, serial number. You put your name, you put your rank, you put your serial number type information. And that distinction is very important for you to understand when you think about what's being asked of you. You also want to make sure that there is general education, right? These are the scope of things that you ought to consider. Here are some types of pieces of information that are relevant. Here are some considerations that courts will look to, but not here's exactly what you should do, right? Because again, the shoulds become much more in the realm of legal advice versus the factors to be considered. All right. So think about that and think about what is permissible and not permissible in your jurisdiction. Because even though you're a licensed attorney, someone asking a question may not be in your jurisdiction. So the question that they're asking may or may not be one that you are authorized to even give advice to because you're not licensed in that jurisdiction. Okay. So again, very important that you understand the distinction between legal information and education versus legal advice. All right. Strategy number 3 is that you have to understand on Reddit. You have to understand the audience, okay? Now, Reddit communities are very niche and they are very skeptical, as I said before, about advertising. So you don't want to spew your answer with whatever you're saying. If you want to engage, you don't want to engage with you ought to consider ABC. And, for more strategies on that, come to my website and book a consultation. If you do a direct call to action, a direct request, that is going to be perceived very negatively. Okay. And if you have any doubt about that, just go on to Reddit and look at different communities, because people do say those sorts of things, and they oftentimes get a very harsh reality check about how that is received. But you want to think about whether your ideal client is on the Reddit communities that you're looking at. And then you want to think about what you can say that ultimately gives them what they're looking for in a way that protects you. Okay, so those two things go hand in hand. But this, again, is a long-term strategy. I want you to think about this like a branding strategy, right? If you consult a marketer and say, hey, I want to shift my brand. My brand is currently associated with low cost, fast and easy legal services, and I want to shift into a completely different sphere. I want to, serve a luxury aesthetic or serve a luxury clientele. Well, that doesn't happen by just changing the words on your website, right? There's a lot that goes into changing your brand, and it does take time. You have to evolve a brand. You don't just change the colors, change the words, and poof, you got a new brand, right? That is the starting point. That is not the finish point. So when you think about being on Reddit, you have to think about it like a long-term strategy. Think about it like search engine optimization, much more so than PPC. Okay. All right. Fourth thing to consider if you are contemplating marketing on Reddit, and this is the risk of reputational backlash. Okay. If you have a misstep on Reddit, you have to keep in mind that this is not like a social media platform, right? We've said many, many times on this podcast that the only social media platform that is indexable by search engines is LinkedIn. Okay. Everything else is within a contained environment. You post something on Facebook, it's not going to be crawled and found by Google. Okay. So when you think about that, when you think about the fact that social media is somewhat contained, you can have a misfire on social media and ultimately limit the risk of that, right? You can delete the post that gets all of the nasty responses. You can, over the course of time, put more posts so that that gets pushed down on your page. There are ways for you to ultimately recover. On Reddit, however, it is there, it is permanent, and it is likely to be found. So that doesn't mean because there is any risk, the risk is so great that you shouldn't go there. It just means that you need to go in with a little bit more than a try and test. You do need to have a strategy before you step into this domain. Okay. The other thing to keep in mind is that negative feedback on Reddit is not just public and permanent, but it also is something that typically gets amplified. I can tell you, I have gone searching for content all the time, right? I'm always looking for something. And many, many times I will ask, is it possible to, or is there a way for me to? And I will get a subreddit answer in the Google search. And honestly, the content will be from years ago. It might be something that's no longer even being sold or offered by the product or service provider that I'm looking at. But somebody complained about something however long ago, and the content comes up. Okay. So I want you to think about that, because while it's great that if you get a positive nod from somebody on Reddit, you also can generate some negative buzz, and that's going to be a little bit more sticky, right? So a poorly executed strategy here can really cause harm. All right. Fifth and final thing that you need to consider if you are contemplating law firm marketing on Reddit, and that is the potential payoff. Okay. The untapped market for both search engine optimization and AI optimization is huge. So I want you to think about ChatGPT, right? ChatGPT is based on language models. And I'm going to use ChatGPT, but this is true of artificial platforms beyond ChatGPT. It's true of Copilot, it's true of Gemini, and so forth. These platforms are based on language models, right? They are connecting dots. And they are getting more sophisticated by the moment at connecting dots. So when you think about what ChatGPT is looking at in order to recommend a service provider, in order that your law firm be found, it is looking at the connectivity between what is this person asking for, right? Who is this person, right? So it is much more serving up what you, the user of the platform, desires based on who you are and how many conversations you have had with that particular platform. If you've spoken a lot to ChatGPT and given a lot of information about who you are, what you need, what problems you want to solve, etc., when you go looking for something, you're going to get a different answer than somebody who may have never used the platform or have only used it tangentially, right? Because it has more context. It has a better understanding of you in terms of what you have shared than somebody who has shared less. And when you think about that, you're starting to see now more offering Reddits and subreddit communities in ChatGPT. And the beautiful thing about that is it'll be easier for you to get found if your law firm is mentioned or you as a lawyer are mentioned in a subreddit, because if somebody is searching for a particular type of person, a particular type of service provider, a particular type of entity, your entity is going to not only just be offered up as a choice, but it's going to be offered up in the context of something that's already verified, right? So people will go searching on ChatGPT, and the fact that ChatGPT says, hey, here are 5 options for the legal service that you're looking for, that may or may not be the stopping point. But for the more sophisticated consumer, that will be the starting point, right? They're going to go to those links. They're going to want to know, okay, ChatGPT gave me 5 recommendations. What is that based on? If it's based on a Reddit, if it's based on something that's on Reddit, it is more likely to be seen in the way of a testimonial than if it is something that is a place where you are advertising, right? Because again, skeptical of advertising, that is the person who's on Reddit already. But in addition, it is information that someone was not solicited to share. Now, I am sure on some level, at some point, some law firm is going to get their clients to start posting positive things about them on Reddit. Okay? I'm not going to be talking about the ethics of that, but hey, we solicit folks to give us Google reviews. Why not a Reddit review, right? But a review on Reddit is not the same thing as a review on Google. Google reviews are solicited and oftentimes are reviewed by people to evaluate the service provider. But on Reddit, it is about community. It is about the substance of what people are talking about. So if your name shows up there and you get recommended there, it's going to have a higher degree of reliability than if your name shows up on your own Google business profile where you have solicited your clients to give you reviews. Or at least there's a possibility that you solicited. Some people get a lot of star reviews because they did a great job, but more often than not, if people give you a lot of reviews and you didn't solicit them, it's because they're complaining about something. All right, guys. Today we have been talking about an out-of-the-box topic. We've been talking about law firm marketing on Reddit. Now, again, all of the recommendations that we've talked about with regard to this particular platform, this is a newer strategy. This is a strategy that is catching some steam. There are different marketers that are talking to their clients about it, so there is an opportunity there. But again, it has to be executed very carefully with guidance and with an understanding of what you're doing and that it is a long-term strategy, not a short-term strategy. All right, guys, I am Allison Williams, host of the Crushing Chaos with Law Firm Mentor podcast, and I will see you on our next episode.